Hey there, it's Makarov owner. So I was working on a little project here, making some 762 by 45 brass, and um, I've been able to do that by using 308 brass, believe it or not, and also Argentine. And I want to talk a little bit about what I found in doing this. It's probably about as hard as you're going to be able to get, honestly. So what I actually had to do, I use my 303 British dies, and then I bush it up. I make a little bushing to go and lift the case. So this one actually got wrecked, but it was like a 9mm stuffed into a 40 Smith & Wesson, and it just goes up underneath this. There's a lot of pressure going up in there, so if a person made one out of a steel base, that would be better. So anyway, in doing this, you got to lube the snot out of the case, and you run the case multiple times up and through and driving it back with the capper out, and I use a 1/4 inch rod. So you have to keep playing this up and down motion until you finally get it run all the way in. And then you gotta, I put it in a lathe. You could probably do it on a drill press too, maybe even a hand drill, but that would be the very most difficult way. I use a shop smith and chuck it up into a 4-jaw chuck, the brass neck first, and go ahead and turn this brass down to 0.44. So once you do that, then you also have to enlarge the extractor groove a little bit, because there's not going to be quite enough extractor groove to get your brass out. Okay, so once you got to that point, now we're going to get to sizing, because now we can get further up into that case, right? Or further up into the die, rather. So that's the point at which you really need to have that bushing. So at that point, we're going to run this case up multiple times. You could do it in one go, but I do multiple times if I'm doing just, I have to be able to set the depth, right? So I mean, we're only talking about one case at this point. If I was doing a bunch, I'd just have to set it once and then go. But from the bottom to the shoulder is 1.44. So the bottom base size here is 0.44, up to the shoulder is 1.44. Kind of odd, but that's the way it goes. Overall case length from the bottom to the top is 1771. Okay? So once you go ahead and get your shoulder, well, now you have to trim it. So I use my little lathe and trim it. So, just cut it back approximately and then trim it in to the proper length. And I usually trim to the proper length after I've necked it. So, once I've done this overall length and I've done a rough trim, then I go ahead and neck it in the 762 by 39 die. Just the neck, nothing more. So once I do that, then I can go ahead and trim it to the final length. Okay. Now, while you were doing your rough trimming, you should probably, I was using military brass. This military brass is pretty thick. So I take a file and go ahead and remove some of this material, because believe it or not, by the time I get a bullet in there and get everything crimped down, there's too much mass here to go ahead and chamber up. I was having problems with the neck making things not seat into the chamber because how fat it was. So things that you have to alter, the overall base size has to be altered. And you can see where I've kind of got polish marks here. You have to take that, it's originally 475. You got to take it from 475 down to 44, and I do that with a file as it's turning. Okay, you have to enlarge the extractor groove, you have to cut it to length, and then you have to reduce the neck. And so you got some work to get there, but it's worth what you think it's worth, right? All I'm saying is that for me, I end up with a few destroyed 308 cases, and I don't have anything to do with them. And I have this rifle that it's hard to get brass for. So if I destroy a case and I make it into something that's usable and it takes me a little while to get there, okay. I suppose that's okay. I'm not sure how much of this I'm going to do. But anyway, I just thought that I'd pass that along. And as far as the interior thickness of the wall, I was coming out at like point. Here I'll show you. I've got a couple of spent pieces in my pocket. I parted off because I wanted to know what that wall thickness was. You see those? So I got the top and the bottom ends. Okay. So let's give you a clean measurement. I'm going to zero out. And so wall thickness 0.030, 027, 034. So I get a little variety, 035. And it's going to be virtually the same here. Point being, I think we got plenty of mass there. I don't think we're going to have a case separation when I fire it. It's an experimental thing. Do it at your own risk. Not your dad, not your uncle. I'm just experimenting and I'm sharing my experiment. So I believe it's safe to go, and I'm going to go ahead and run it. So, it's up to you whether you do or not. All I'm wanting to share is that it's possible, and I believe it's going to work fine. Having said that, I took a lot of care in what I'm doing. It chambers, and it cycles through the mag, and it ejects, so I'm good to go. And I've made some brass like this before, but I use 220 Swift. And I'm going to be getting some more 220 Swift in pretty soon. I've got some once fired cases and 220 Swift coming. And when I get those, I'll go ahead and make a video on, running those through the system. And it's a lot easier than doing the 303. Or, excuse me, the 308 or the Argentine. Honestly, with this brass, as long as the 475 base, I mean, you got 30-06 through, God knows, 243 or whatever, are all possibilities potentially to turn down like this, because I really didn't have to take much off, and it's all down here at the bottom end where the case is pretty doggone thick. Enlarge that extractor groove, which I did with a hacksaw, and then you turn the neck down a little bit to be able to go ahead and chamber into the rifle. So anyway, you guys have a good day. Thanks. Bye.